Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
The planets have aligned, and our cries have been heard. Ladies and gentlemen, the new MacBook Pro. In a special episode of Apple Slice, myself, Simon, and Nick give you the need-to-know details of the MacBook Pro and its incredible touch bar. Plus, Apple preview a unified viewing experience with the upcoming TV app. Get all of our cool Keynote coverage in a prized and premium Apple Slice. It is here. The MacBook Pro is finally here, and we have a very special episode lined up. But just before we get into it, a little bit of news for anyone that's been hanging around for AirPods. They are no longer coming in October. They are just coming soon. So I'm kind of wondering, when are we ever going to see these AirPods?
Yeah, so it's not, I guess, the first time that they've announced a date and then delayed it. I think the most recent was the 2013 Mac Pro. They said was coming in like late October, November, and came in December. And
yeah, I remember that.
I remember I had no intention of purchasing that, especially at the time, so it didn't really personally affect me. But the one I was most bothered by is iTunes 11. So it's kind of scary to think how important iTunes was in my life as recently as iTunes 11, and now I never, ever use iTunes. I think actually I just used it today to make an encrypted backup, because I've kind of flipped the mental switch on getting the iPhone 7. So I wanted my health data to all be there. So you have to do an encrypted backup and restore from there to keep your health data. So that's the only reason I used it.
Yeah, well, at least it's still a some use for you. But yeah, I know what you mean. My use of iTunes on desktop is very minimal nowadays. But obviously there's still people, sitting there working, having some tunes playing. So yeah, iTunes is good for that. But yeah, the event, it happened. I didn't think it ever would. So on Friday morning, October 28th, I actually put a video on our social profiles with the live stream times. So as Australia always has it, it's very early in the morning. Now, this is Apple's last event, I'm assuming, for 2016. So before we kind of break it down in order of how it happened, what's your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, so very high level. I'm pretty impressed with the touch bar being, I guess, the main feature of the new ones, but they are very pricey. I'd say that was one thing I left at events thinking.
Yeah, that was, I mean, how how long I've been hanging out for it, and I actually had messaged Nick. I was like, oh, I really want to get it, but it was a little bit more than I thought, so took a little bit of sweet talking, but I got there. So
yeah, so you're saying the reason that you got over the line is close to your birthday?
Yes, yeah. Well, just a bit of that and a bit of I've waited this long and I can't I can't not do it. So yeah. Anyway, I placed my order straight away before I even left for work that morning, and currently sitting on 2 to 3 weeks ship time, although on the site it says it's now 4 to 5 weeks, so I'm not sure which is which, but
I think it's the one at the time that you ordered.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So that should actually, knowing where I am in regional WA, that'd be more like the 3 weeks, and that will land right around my birthday. So, okay, so the whole event itself was hour 20. So shorter than other ones. I mean, that makes sense. It contained far less than WWDC or the September one. I thought it flowed pretty well. It didn't have too much filler, sort of didn't really need to. But straight away, a smaller room. I mean, it was in Cupertino, so the crowd is much smaller. No Johnny Ive. It's just sort of becoming a consistent thing. And funnily enough, someone pointed out that the exit lights were on. If anyone that's seen the Jobs movie, that'll make sense to them. So now before we start, what do you think of when they did the announcement of the visual theme of the event? You know, kind of like the Apple logo with the exploding paint powder thing. Immediately, I recognised that from those iOS wallpapers.
Yeah, they look pretty cool, but I think those iOS wallpapers were in iOS 8, if I remember correctly, and it kind of makes you wonder if these MacBook Pros were supposed to be timed up with that release
back then. Yeah. Either that, or because the event was the whole schedule mix up, they quickly had to throw together some graphics and they go, oh, we'll grab this old wallpaper that we got. So
I still don't understand the schedule mix up. There was some theory that it had to do with shoving the event in to be the 25-year MacBook anniversary.
That's what I was thinking, because it aligns with the actual week of the anniversary.
So did someone just remember that and were like, oh, we should have it then so we can say it's an anniversary? I don't know.
I mean, it's either way, whatever the reasoning behind it, it happened, and we're finally here and we're going to talk about it. So all right, so kicking off the event, I was expecting, well, I don't really know what I was expecting, but they put together this video all about accessibility. So this was showing a whole range of people with different disabilities and how they're interacting with the entire range of Apple products. Now, I thought this had an incredible impact. It demonstrated product features that I didn't even know exist, particularly with the lady editing in iMovie at the end. I mean, I thought that was awesome. So I was watching it and I was kind of like started tearing up a bit. I thought just how they put it together and what they were showing was really great. What did you think of this?
Yeah, so I guess just briefly, the videos just before the keynotes are a recent addition, kind of like the last two to 3 years they've been putting them in there just before the keynote actually starts, and I really enjoy them. It's always a good, like, I think they put a lot of effort into them, and those basically in a nutshell always really express why I love Apple products, and I think this one is no different. So I agree, it kind of makes you teary-eyed. Like, I just find the accessibility features so impressive. I mean, if you think about it, very high level, you've got blind people who can use a touch screen it's a flat surface, so there's no like braille type thing, and then it's also a screen, so essentially, they can't see it. So kind of everything about it says, I'm not to be used by blind people, and yet they've got such good features to make that screen accessible to anyone. I just find it, that's just one example, but in this video they had, people with physical disabilities. There was a blind guy taking a photo, and then I didn't even know that it did this. So someone steps in the photo and then it says like, one face kind of thing. And then they've got these little mini videos from, on the accessibility website, and it's that scene a bit more fleshed out. And then basically I think it's like his little brother's not in the photo, and it says 2 people in the photo, and he's like, oh, get in the photo. And then it says 3 people in the photo. So I think it's really impressive.
Oh, definitely. I haven't seen, I mean, I don't watch every presentation of, other tech companies and that sort of thing, but I thought this one was it just reinforces the fact that Apple are creating products for everyone. Like you obviously have people in older age brackets, like say grandparents and stuff that previously probably wouldn't touch new technology, and you got them using iPads and everything, and now they've just really reinforced this fact that it can be used by people no matter what their abilities, and I think that's absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So Tim Cook, he kicks it off as always. Does a bit of a summary, talks about iPhone, the new features in the Photos app, like memories and stuff. They then brought out the fact that iOS 10 has 60% adoption rate, and it's only been out for a short time versus the latest version of Android, which is less than 1%.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Can't be that compelling. I think Anyway, that in itself, the 60% is quite impressive. Touches on the fact that 10.1 is out with portrait mode. So now that people are out there using it, and you've sort of seen real life examples of it, do you still find it impressive?
Yeah. So I kind of alluded to the fact earlier that I've flipped the mental switch on buying the iPhone 7, and then the choice came up between 7 and 7 Plus, and anyone who's followed our podcast would know that I've been quite keen for the Plus size, but there's something about the form factor of the jet black iPhone 7 that's really pulling me in. I quite like the single camera design over the dual camera design. It just looks a lot sleeker to me. So the thing that really is the deciding factor is portrait mode. So, I do portrait mode afterwards with Pixelmator on my iPad Pro. I probably could do something, get the bokeh effect going, but it's pretty cool. I will say it's really cool, and it's leaving me with a big decision. At the moment, I'm saying it's not enough for me to go Plus.
The fact that what we're seeing is true to what they presented at the actual keynote itself is cool. It's not like it's completely buggy or anything like that. And I'm definitely keen to try it out myself. So I've got a couple of friends that have bought a Plus, so I'll hassle them for a bit and use their 7 Plus. They announced Apple Pay in Japan, then covered off Apple Watch just with some quotes about feedback about Series 2, and then they from there segued to Apple TV.
I just want to go over the Apple Pay in Japan and how that relates back to here in Australia. Not only are we still holding out on the banks as usual, but now that I moved to Sydney, I've been using public transport a whole lot more, and obviously got the Opal card going, and it's just such a manual process. Like, I know you can have auto top up, but I always have to make sure I have my card, and it's just another thing to have to carry around. And with Apple Pay in Japan, they've got like it's not an NFC chip, but it's like a competitor to an NFC chip. I don't remember the name, but they use that for their public transport things. So you can just kind of use your phone or your watch to log in on public transport, I think. So it's pretty cool. I wish we had something like that here.
We've got delay with the other banks and stuff, and if they can adopt something like that for transport in Australia, we just got to get people out there using this sort of technology. And as you said, you're using transport more, so that'd definitely be very handy. Okay, so the other part to the event, obviously everyone knows that a MacBook Pro is the main focus, but they did a fair bit with Apple TV here. So in the intro, covered that the App Store now has 8,000 apps. They announced that Minecraft is on Apple TV, which is big news because there's a huge sort of almost cult status following of that game. That you then had the Twitter product manager come out during a sports game, showing that you can be live tweeting while watching the sports, and it kind of like slides over with the feed on the right. Now, I don't watch live sports, and a lot of the time in these Apple presentations, they're showing, American football. What do you think about this? Because I sort of don't really, I don't see the opportunity myself that I'd be using it. I could see if they put it with some other sort of media that you'd be watching. But I mean, is live tweeting during a sports match your sort of thing?
I wouldn't say it's popular with the sports I follow. So I follow rugby union and cricket pretty closely. And I think what makes the live tweeting like a compelling option is just basically the sheer number of people watching it. And I think that there are a whole lot more people watching and tweeting about American football than there are about a cricket test match kind of thing. Yeah. So I don't think it will work for what I would watch sports wise, but I could watch something like The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones in a Twitter type UI with the tweets on the side, because the reactions there's worldwide again, so that helps. And I think people have quite funny reactions to that kind of stuff. So I think that would be better for me than a sports match, at least the sports I follow. Maybe like Olympics would have been pretty cool.
Oh, that would have been maybe, the 2020, they could have, rolled it out worldwide by then, and that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, definitely with huge TV shows like Game of Thrones, that would be, an awesome way to go.
So what was important here was that it was tweets about the game, right? And I think that when I use Twitter while watching something, I'm just looking at my normal feed to supplement whatever I've got on the screen. So it's not like I'll be following Game of Thrones tweets necessarily while watching Game of Thrones. But so what I think would be cool is if I just had my normal Twitter feed alongside whatever I was watching as like a slide over type thing on Apple TV. That would be cool.
That could be cool. And I'm even thinking stuff like, I don't know if you ever watch it. I watch it every week. ABC has Q&A. It's the political talk show, and they always have a hashtag Quanda, and so you got live tweets and everything popping up at the bottom of the screen. So instead of having that, they should have the live stream within the ABC iView app, and then the slide over. So that would work really well for that. So before we talk about a new app they've announced, all about TV, I did notice that I'm on Font Patrol again. That in the what they were showing in the presentation, you had the Myriad Apple on the little movies and TV shows apps in that top row, but you go to the website and where they've shown about this new app we're about to talk about on the screen, they've updated those two fonts to San Francisco. So I'm expecting that with whatever Apple TV update, when the app comes out, they're going to be rolling that font change there. And people will start to notice now, as I mentioned with the iPhone 7, and they're using, Apple's San Francisco there. They've applied the same thing to the other products, and particularly MacBook Pro, which we'll talk about later. So no font is going to be left unturned when I
hope that continues. I think it's pretty good to get it all on a consistent basis.
Yeah. I think they've got the majority of the way there now. So I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so a new app called TV. So it's an app within Apple TV called TV. So what's it about? It's a unified TV experience. So that's what they call it. So it's the idea of bringing all the apps that you watch stuff on into one area, so you don't have to be switching back and forth between Netflix and iTunes and such. So the senior designer of Apple TV came out to present this. Now, just before we talk about exactly what the TV app is, what do you think about that icon? Some people kind of like it, some don't. I think it's pretty cool.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's just sort of like there was some complaints online. I'm like, well, come on, it's a TV. It looks nice. It fits in with everything else with Apple. So there you go. But the cool thing about this, just before we talk about it, is that the TV app is available on iOS as well. So they're sort of bringing this unified viewing experience outside of just Apple TV. So Nick, how does this app actually work?
Yeah, so basically, it's kind of, I've noticed, a difficult app to explain to people. So as you've just mentioned, you can get it on Apple TV or any of your iOS devices, and it's essentially, envision it as like a home, what the Apple TV home screen should be in terms of content. So basically you log into it, or you just like go into it rather, and there's an up next screen. So similar to like an Apple Music style thing where you've got like a playlist essentially going. It would recommend, I'm not sure which order, how it starts off the order originally, but it basically has like a list of TV shows it knows you watch it, going horizontally across the screen, and you can select any one of them. So you log on with your cable provider, and essentially whatever you watch is all in like an up next screen. So that's pretty cool if it already knows that you watch that stuff. It gives you the new episodes up front. So it's pretty cool. It also has suggested shows or movies, quite like Apple Music. As I said, there's like a lot of, I guess a lot of their machine learning learnings coming through in a TV style space from the Apple Music space. So you can also browse by category, subcategories too. So quite similar to like Siri search with that. And so you just, as I mentioned earlier, you sign in with your provider, and then as soon as you press play, it plays straight away. So all of the content through the TV app, I think, it knows that you can watch that without paying extra. Is that? Do you remember them saying that?
Not sure entirely. I
think I might have read it somewhere then, rather. But I think the idea there is to kind of stress-free know that you can watch whatever it's recommending you.
And basically the fact that, you're not going to miss out on a new episode of something you like. And it's kind of, if anyone uses the Netflix Apple TV app, it's sort of similar order of that, where it's got like what you're currently watching, and then because you watched, and it's got, similar shows, and then it's got the breakdown of categories. So
it's basically kind of like a Netflix for everything, in a sense. And then there's also syncing across devices. So for example, if you pick up your iPad and you start a new show, let's say it's one they recommend to you, and you start it, it will come up at the front of your Up Next on all your other devices, if you don't finish it. So, and you pick up right where you left off. So, but I think they didn't explicitly mention this, but I noticed this, and I think it's pretty cool. You know how on your Apple TV you can say, like, they use this example, play Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and it will pick it up and play it from whatever content providers you have. And then from unified search. And then now you can do that on your iPad and your iPhone, which you couldn't actually do before. So that's pretty cool. I think they're just like making cool. Siri more consistent there. And then you can also ask Siri for other relative data. So, for example, when watching live sport, you can ask Siri questions about the game. That's pretty cool.
But as we mentioned, we're probably not going to be asking live sport questions. But if they,
well, I might
put
ask
that into something else,
I think that's a bit different. Like I could say, "Where's the next Test match?" or something like that. And I'm actually quite frustrated that Siri doesn't know cricket or rugby or any other mainstream Australia sports. Actually, it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, they sort of push sports so much in the keynotes, but that's very much an American-focused thing. So if they can definitely expand upon that, then we can sort of start using all those features. The funny thing is the actual designer presenting it, I accidentally, I sort of continued watching the keynote because I downloaded it, and I accidentally had it at 1.5 speed, and she was speaking like very fast, very start-stop. And I almost for a second thought that it was like the Siri voice, like the Siri female American voice. And I thought that was quite funny because it's very exact, very precise, but it sounded almost robotic. And I was like, hang on, she's speaking really quickly. And I looked, I was like, oh, okay, switch it back. And then it sounded a bit more normal, but that was something quite funny. Okay, so the TV app will be available in December starting in the US. As things go, I'd expect Australia to be either in December or not far behind.
I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure. I don't think we'll have it for a long time to come. And that's mainly because I don't think whatever TV providers, Foxtel or whoever else, whatever Optus controls, will want to integrate.
Maybe they'll bring it in, but then the actual, what it picks up within the whole unified search expands. So maybe it starts off with a smaller amount. Like incorporating iTunes, Netflix, ABC, SBS and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the one thing which I think was quite interesting was Netflix is not part of the TV app. They don't pull in content from Netflix. And I think, so the way it works with unified search is you'll ask Siri the query, and then Siri will bring through like a front screen. But when you actually press play, it will go through and play through the Netflix app. So essentially Apple doesn't know what you're watching on Netflix. And so with Up Next, it's a bit different. And I think there's like a lot more, data control there, or like they would have the data. And I don't think Netflix, that's kind of like their one giveaway, like something they don't want to give away. So I think that might be a reason why Netflix is not supported on that.
All right. Yeah. See, I didn't quite look enough into that. I just sort of assumed that it would pull in, from whatever the primary, apps on there that you're using. But, anyway, well, hopefully at some point they can incorporate Netflix, because that'd be really handy.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to the big one, the MacBook Pro. So Tim Cook comes out giving his usual product category summary about how, how the Mac is integrated into people's lives and enrich people's lives, as he likes to always say. So with that southern drawl. And he points out that this week the week when they presented it marks 25 years of Apple notebooks. And as you mentioned, that may have been the reason for the schedule change. So they have a sort of visual Mac laptop history video, which ends with the first view of the touch bar. What do you think about this, the way that it showed you the progression, just seeing that first Mac notebook and seeing how chunky it was to now? Did you like kind of looking back on stuff that may seem a bit cringy now?
Yeah, I actually really do enjoy that design-wise, so I'll get to what I mean. But I really enjoyed seeing the progression of the design. It was actually cool. Like, some of them were cool along the way, and still cool looking back at them. And then some of them really were cringeworthy. Like, how did we ever think that was cool? If it's not super sleek aluminium.
I guess you just got to put yourself in the mindset that sort of like almost yellowish grey plastic was tech at the time. So
yeah, I might take two quick diversions, and the one is I don't mind visual comparisons, but I really hate performance comparisons to first generation products. They did it recently with the iPad Pros and the iPad. And then more specifically in this keynote, they spoke about, compared to like the first Apple laptop to now, it was like the one now is like 3.5 million times faster and can do what a year of the original's computation in 5 seconds. And I'm like, I hope that your benchmark isn't the laptop from 25 years ago, because that's not what you should be comparing it to performance-wise.
I just guess they wanted to just put some massive figure out there and people be like, whoa, this is how much they progressed. But I mean, everyone knows how much better technology now, performs compared to back then. It's advanced so much. So yeah, those ones are a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, the other quick side note. So I don't know if you watch the YouTuber Marquez Brownlee. He interviewed Craig Federighi after the keynote, and essentially he said to him, okay, like, let's go back 25 years. What device would you take back to the past to prove that you're from the future? So which Apple device would you take back? So Craig is like, kind of like, oh, I don't know which one I'd choose. And then the question sort of changes to, what is your favorite like device that you'd take back? And he's like, well, that's a very different question. My favorite versus what I would take back to the past to prove that I'm from the future are two different things. And so essentially he said he doesn't have a favorite, but he would very cliche take back the iPhone. He says like he'll take back the iPhone just because of the sheer computing power in such a small device. It's just like the most futuristic compared to back then. So I just thought that was a worthwhile, since we're talking about the history, just to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think anything with Craig in it is worthwhile. So.
Exactly.
So then Phil, our buddy Phil, comes to the stage. Okay, so he starts it off with the MacBook Pro. Now, straight away we can see the colors or lack thereof. So there is silver and space gray. There's no space black or any form of black, no backlit logo, and then obviously no gold, rose gold. So I know that after seeing black, you kind of want to kick space gray off, away. So how are you feeling about it now?
Yeah, I'm still feeling that. I think that I just hate that there's not unity. So as we briefly mentioned before with the font, it's pretty cool that they're getting a font all across, the whole range. But
yeah,
I like my stuff matching. So it's kind of frustrating that they don't have any black version. And for the people that have other color devices, at least I suppose if you have gold or rose gold, you have the option of the MacBook. But I would just then go the plain silver. I know you went space gray. Spoiler alert for everyone who's holding out to the end to find out your order. But yes, I think I'll just go silver because it's classic and you know, never has matched. So did you want to get into what you ordered?
Yeah, well, basically that was the previous one I had, the 2015 model was silver, and the only reason I went space grey was because the previous one was silver. I still love silver. I still like space grey as a colour, but because I don't have any black devices yet, the matching up thing isn't so much an issue for me. But I totally get you where, you know, especially as you say, for the people that have gold and rose gold, wasn't included with the MacBook Pros this time round, but I can kind of see why, in the sense that it's probably a bit more of a fashion choice thing, and the 12-inch is a bit more of a, you know, this is like my trendy light computer scenario. So that part didn't surprise me so much. It's just more the fact that I thought, okay, well, they finally moved into this aluminium black and they didn't bring it out. It's probably a supply issue, maybe, I don't know, but either way, yes, ordered 13-inch space grey, the entry level spec, which is still awesome. Yeah,
the one with the touch bar. Yeah,
the one with the touch bar, obviously. So, there was no way I was going to go the non-touch bar after going on about the touch bar for so long. So
yeah, space grey is still nice in its own right. It's just not matchy with all the other ones. So
yeah, I get you there. Yeah.
I don't know if you've popped into an Apple store recently, but they have this awesome graphic up of it's the iPhone 7 Plus in jet black. So we know it's at least 128 or 256 gig model, and then they have the Apple Watch ceramic edition, and then the AirPods. So it's the white of the AirPods and the ceramic, but then the jet black iPhone, it's not matching at all, but it looks so good.
Yeah, because it's like the two extremes, and because the ceramic has that glossy look to it, like the jet black. So yeah, and that's a little bit of experience for you. So you actually went and saw one in real life. I had a while ago. So yeah, just quickly, you're kind of loving the ceramic now after being a bit confused by it before.
Yeah, so I mentioned before that I love it and I hate it, and it's just like amazing and not cool at the same time. But I still feel a little bit like that because it doesn't match a whole lot of bands, but it is really, really, really nice looking. I think that I would still rather go space black. I wear more black generally, so yeah, but it is cool. It is cool.
But then if you had ceramic, it'd be more of a statement. It's like, I'm fully in black, but here's
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, it's really a toss up, but it is quite a bit more expensive than the space black. So. Okay.
So moving on, with these new MacBook Pro, some quick size and weight comparisons. So the 13-inch is 17% thinner. It's 14.9 mil thick versus 18 from the previous. It's 3 pounds, which is 1.37 kilos versus 3.5 pounds, and 23% less volume. With 15-inch, it's 14% thinner. It's 15.5 mil versus 18 mil previously. It's 4 pounds, which is 1.83 kilograms versus the 4.5 pounds, and it's 20% less volume. I mean, stuff here, none of it's surprising because every time you expect thinner, lighter, but still I am pretty stoked that they did get it that thin and still have the performance. So that is one of the major things we were talking about, that it wasn't going to be wedge shaped, and it isn't wedge shaped, but they still managed to pull off that thin form factor.
So I saw a 13-inch in store on Friday, and it is really thin. It's like it is really good looking, super thin. It's not much thicker than the MacBook, and yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. So even more, just the next few weeks are going to be hell for me just waiting. But okay, the Force Touch trackpad is now twice the size. So, I mean, you said that you saw one. Did the trackpad seem large to you? It looks pretty massive in the pictures.
Yeah, so some people have been saying it's like comically large. I didn't. My attention wasn't drawn to it. So I didn't find it to be overly large.
Yeah. I mean, the design of it is subtle anyway. And they said that the reason for the size is more for your the different gestures, which totally makes sense to me.
And it's got palm rejection, really good palm rejection, supposedly. So I think that's worthwhile noting. So you don't have to try and skirt your way around it, even though it's large. You can just rest normally and carry on with your business and it'll be fine.
I was really hoping for the butterfly mechanism keys, and it does. It's the second generation. I'm really keen to use it, though people with the 12-inch MacBook, which was the first product to have this type of keys, there was mixed reviews. Some people saying that they just didn't like the feel of it, or there was some issues with it. So hopefully they've sorted that out second generation wise, which I think they will. And yeah.
On the, I've watched a couple of YouTube reviews on it. I didn't actually get to test it out myself in store, but, Mike from Detroit Borg said it's the best keyboard he's ever used, and it's by far way better than the previous MacBook Pro, which is the one that I still have. But yes, supposedly way better than the MacBook too. It's kind of, they've rejigged a few things, and he said it's like super stable. Keys are stable and easy to type with. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll be pleased.
That's awesome that you mentioned that, because I'm definitely follow Mike from Detroit Borg there, and take his reviews quite seriously. So that's awesome news for me. But mainly he draws attention to the OLED bar area. So this is replacing the function key row without actually naming it yet. So he then goes on and starts introducing it, saying, talks about the history of the function keys, and then points out that this actual OLED bar is Retina display, and it has 10-point multi-touch, which is awesome news. So it's not just literally just for taps only. Okay, so it is called the Touch Bar. It's not the Magic Toolbar. It's not nothing like that. It's Touch Bar, which I think that's the best naming for it.
Yeah, it's probably the most accurate, because like some of the other names that they could have called it, like toolbar, whatever, limit people's perception of what it's capable of. And I think it's designed to be super extendable and not just an extra button. So I'm sure we'll get into it, but basically that just leaves it open to, it's a touch bar that's available for developers to do anything with.
Yeah, so basically it's application specific. So this is the primary use for it. So the buttons and controls on this bar change according to what app you're using. So they start off with the main system tools like volume, brightness, play controls. It shows a colored Siri icon, still colored there. And you can, on the right, with the system tools, you can just give it a tap and it releases them open. Initially I was like, oh, well, why is it not open always? But then I realized if you accidentally touch the brightness or volume, it's going to become a bit of an issue. So that little tap to release means that you definitely do want to perform that action there. They showed stuff like in Safari, your favorite sites will pop up in that middle section, and you can slide them across horizontally. The tools, they were showing that editing a photo, that you can, this little sort of scroll dial comes up where you can straighten the image, and stuff like rotation. Now, these are my favorite types of touch bar uses, the ones that have that where you get to sort of slide back and forth. And they showed stuff like quick type suggestions, which is a instant familiarity with iOS. Now, one that I think that you'll be excited about, I am as well, is Touch ID. So Touch ID has its own area on the right. It's actually separate to the touch bar. It's within the same area though. And you can unlock your Mac. Yay! It's what I've been hoping for. So this is an alternative.
That's because you don't have a watch. Yeah.
Yeah. They made it for me. Apple listened and they knew, and they made it for me.
One day you'll get a watch and you'll love it just the same way that I love my watch. But because the watch unlocking is amazing.
Oh, cool. That's cool to hear. And hey, if I did have both, then I could be like unlocking both. I could try unlock it at the same time, see what happens.
Yep.
But yeah. So it's a Sapphire second generation. It's powered by an Apple T1 chip. And the fact that it's, as you'd expect, used for Apple Pay on Mac, which is awesome. Awesome news for countries that have full bank support. So now the demo. So they're going to pull out a demo, and we have who appeared on stage there, Nick?
It's none other than our favorite presenter, Craig Federighi.
Yay! Just a bit of that was a background clap, didn't really work. Super smooth as always. His hair seemed even more luxurious and like present.
Yeah.
I reckon.
Straight from the hairdresser, I reckon.
Yeah, so how did he sort of kick off his demo?
Yeah, so he pulled the black cloth off the MacBook Pro. There was actually he unveiled them like a magician kind of thing, and And then later on in the podcast, later on in the keynote, I watched it on podcast, and that's why I said that. But later on in the keynote, when he was inviting Phil back onto stage, they kind of made it like he was getting a member member from the audience back on stage. I don't know. It was a bit funny, very un-Apple-like, kind of like just a quick joke that they hadn't even rehearsed kind of thing. So that was funny. Yeah.
Just on the fly.
So he pulls off the black material, and then he very quickly showed that you can still have all your old function keys back by holding down the function, key in the bottom left corner, and so and then the escape key was back. I think we had a lot of people the day before were very upset about escape.
Well, basically the MacBook Pro was announced, and suddenly I've seen this same escape key peripheral meme going around saying that Apple's killed the escape key. I'm like, no, they haven't. It's still there. It's there when it's needed. It's just people wanting to rip onto Apple pulling things out. So. So he then points out the control strip on the right, the fact the middle section is dedicated to contextual, actions, and the left has the escape key there.
So one thing I actually wanted to mention before I forget, just on the touch bar and the Touch ID. So you mentioned that it has the Apple T1 chip, which there are very many chips these days to follow what Apple uses, but there's the A10 in the iPhone, there's the S1 and 2, like S1S in the Series 1 watch and S2 in the Series 2 watch, and like a whole bunch of other chips. But the T1 chip is basically like a modified Apple Watch chip, and essentially the OLED bar runs on watchOS, like a very extremely cut down version of watchOS, and is essentially a little bit separate to the rest of the operating system. So, and in the interview earlier that I spoke about with Craig, they really are pushing that it's a custom piece of hardware, and I think that really proves it. It's got its own little processor, its own little OS that it's speaking to, which it's kind of crazy that all the technology they used in like iOS and watchOS to get a secure enclave and basic controls to do this. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they've thought about everything behind it, from the way it'll run and the way that you use it. It's definitely, I mean, obviously I'm going to start talking about it when I get to use it in real life, real applications, but it seems like they've covered all bases. People are very positive about it, and it definitely doesn't feel half-baked or gimmicky. So I think that's definitely awesome news. And Craig continued doing an Apple Mail demo showing QuickType and just stuff like your email formatting, like bold and underline and the color changing, and the integration of emoji I thought was pretty cool. Then went on to just show general web browsing, where you can have your different tabs as little previews on the bar, and he then sort of went to demonstrate Apple Pay and showed that Etsy now supports Apple Pay, which is pretty big news, big online store there.
I saw Kickstarter is also supporting Apple Pay now.
This is cool because when they first announced Apple Pay on web, I sort of thought this was going to be a slow rollout, but it seems to be a bit quicker than expected. So that's definitely a plus there. Then did the same sort of thing with photos, with the slider controls and stuff. But the coolest part was he showed that you can have your photo or video in the complete full screen and be controlling the program purely from the touch bar without having to exit full screen, which I think is just a big plus there. And he then showed that I'm assuming it's just the system tools, is customizable. And the cool part about this is when you're dragging what you want on your touch bar from the screen down to the touch bar, it appears like a little miniature second screen, which I think is awesome. It feels like one more sort of unified system. And a little yay from me when I saw the dedicated screenshot button, because I use screenshots so much. So that was pretty cool. And one last bit they did using Touch ID. Just want to let us know about that.
Yeah, so when Craig pulled up the random member from the audience, being Phil, to come up and take over again, he got Phil to go put his finger on the Touch ID, and basically it did user account switch straight to Phil's account. So that was really cool. And
I thought,
something
awesome.
that people have been pushing for on iPad, but I kind of see iPad as like a one person, one user device. Maybe people with kids will differ, but yeah, that's really cool. And I think people share Macs a whole lot more than they share iOS devices. So glad to see that they implemented that.
Moving on to display, so 67% brighter, 67% higher contrast ratio, has the wide color gamut, so it's 25% more colors. It's as thin as the 12-inch MacBook display, which is awesome, and I would assume part of the reason for the backlit logo being removed. It's 500 nits, now that we know what nits are, aside from terrible bugs that crawl through your hair. And it has a 720p FaceTime camera. Was hoping for a 1080p, but again, I don't use the camera much on laptops for recording or anything, so it's not a deal breaker. Now, with the internals, so the big part about MacBook Pro is for pro users, so they kind of want some good specs in there, and this certainly doesn't let us down. The 13-inch has Intel Core i5 or i7, depending on what you upgrade to. 6th generation dual core, has Intel Iris graphics, which is up to twice as fast. Has an SSD, which has up to 3.1 gigabytes per second speed. Storage, you can get up to 2 terabytes, and the SSD is up to twice as fast. And has 8 gigs of RAM, configurable up to 16. Now, the 15-inch has Intel Core i7 6th generation quad core, has Radeon Pro graphics, 4 gigabytes of video RAM, which is awesome there, and 2.3 times faster than the previous model. The SSD has the same, up to 3.1 gigabytes per second write speed, storage up to 2 terabytes, and is 50% faster than the previous. And with a 15-inch, 16 gig of RAM is standard. There's no upgrade from there, but the reasoning behind that is they say to maintain the battery life efficiency. I'm not sure if that's a cop-out at all or anything, but I think that, 16 gigabytes of RAM in a laptop should be sufficient. And as we've mentioned with Apple's software, their usage of RAM is far more efficient than rivals and that sort of thing. So it's not a deal breaker or anything, the fact you can't go beyond that. And overall has better thermal architecture to keep it cooler and quieter. The speakers, which is this is good news, has twice the dynamic range. They're repositioned to the left and right of the keys. 2.5 times louder bass, and up to 58% more volume.
This is for when you're using your desktop iTunes.
Yes, of course. But I think this is good for when you need to, so many times previously when I had my MacBook Pro, I'd have to take it into a meeting, and when you're showing, say, a video or something you put together, or you're pulling up something on YouTube and you don't have a screen to hook it up to or anything, to have that extra volume there is really handy. And it also has 3 microphones now.
I think they also released, like, the one with the function keys only has 2 microphones, which is worthwhile noting.
Yes, so this is the touch bar only. Has the 3.
And then also with the specs, the SSD up to 3.1 gigabytes. I saw some benchmarks being done on that, and it seemed to break the benchmark test app, because that maxed out at, I think, 2 gigabytes per second, and it was just like fully right at the top, and it just said like exactly 2,000 megabytes per second, and it was kind of like, no, that's broken.
Yeah, I mean, you're onto a good thing when you break the performance test. So now the ports. This is a big one. So before we talk about what's actually in it, what did they take out of the MacBook Pro? Yeah,
so there's no longer MagSafe, which has gotten quite a lot of backlash, and I think it saved quite a few people's laptops from being destroyed. But at the end of the day, there is a third-party Griffin MagSafe to USB-C connector that if you really, really are extra clumsy and you want that, it's not that expensive. Go for that, save your laptop, and you'll be fine. Then there's no longer an HDMI, so you essentially can use one of the other ports, which we'll get to later, to plug a dongle in. And then there's no longer a display port, which kind of in the same form factor as Thunderbolt. No longer USB Type A, no longer SD card slot, which I know this is like a lot of when it comes to professional market, photographers and videographers use the SD card all the time to plug it straight into the MacBook, and I think that they're quite upset about that. I haven't used it since I used a point and shoot camera probably back in 2011. So that's fine for me personally. I'm quite obviously selfish when it comes to what I'm looking for in a device. So.
Oh, but that's, I mean, you're trying to look for what suits you. And I totally get that. I have, already online, photographers and such saying that, why did they remove the SD card slot? So, I mean, they're really pushing forward everything to be run through this USB-C style Thunderbolt 3. So
I think that specific one deserves probably a little bit more attention, because I think the onus is on camera makers to make better wireless transfer. They haven't done it well yet. To the extent where SD card makers started making the SD cards have Wi-Fi transfer, so that it's just ridiculous. It's kind of blows my mind that they can't get a great wireless sync feature, especially since they lost so much market share to iPhone and other phones. So then there's also there's no lightning port, which is not like it was there and taken out. It's just if you're hoping to use your iPhone 7 EarPods on your MacBook, you can't.
I think that was the thing, is that people were sort of saying, oh, I can't believe they've removed the headphone jack from the iPhone 7, lightning port EarPods, and how am I supposed to use them with my, with this new MacBook Pro, which will actually we'll just move on to now. What it has is the 3.5mm jack. So there's a bit of sort of back and forth there. But the main part with the MacBook Pros, there are 4 Thunderbolt 3 USB-C style ports, which is awesome. Now, what can they be used for? They can be used for power, Thunderbolt, USB, DisplayPort, HDMI, and VGA. They're like the ultimate of ports. Has up to 40 gigabits per second transfer, which is really good. And you can power up to 2 5K displays at the same time. So because of this, there's been the whole need for dongles and adapters and cables is stronger than ever. And I know a lot of people knock Apple for saying, oh, just get this extra accessory, it costs me X amount, sort of thing. So how do you feel about it now? I mean, I kind of think they maybe should have, like what they did with iPhone 7, maybe included a Type A to Type C in the box, maybe, because I'm kind of having to look at a port hub now. So what do you think about that?
I think, I don't think there's one great answer on this. I think it's a transition phase. This is not just Apple pulling out a port like the 3.5mm jack because they think that they're trying to get to the future. The USB style port it's a standard, it's a universal standard, and it's quite a lot different to moving to something proprietary. So because they're not moving to something proprietary, I don't think they need to include it in the box, because you can get mostly you could probably get a cheap one off Amazon or eBay or wherever. So I don't think they're obligated to, but it's difficult because obviously, when you're already forking out $2,800 on the entry level MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, it's kind of like you don't want to be putting out extra money essentially. So the one thing that I would say is that I'm pretty happy there's the 3.5mm jack, because I use it currently to record this podcast. So I'd be pretty upset if it didn't have that, even though I'm not getting one immediately. And then the other thing is on the 13-inch one with Touch Bar, the 2 ports on the right-hand side actually have reduced throughput over Thunderbolt, so they don't have full 40 gigabits per second Thunderbolt on the right-hand side, only on the left-hand side. Is a bit confusing, and I'm not sure what speeds they actually do go up to on the right-hand side. So,
I think either way, those the general speeds that you get, whether it's the 40 gigabits or lower, it's still amazingly fast. So,
if you've never used a Thunderbolt hard drive, I highly recommend using one. They are amazing. They are just really, really good. And the last time I used one was Thunderbolt 2, so that was 20 gigabits per second. But
Okay, so talking about speeds and the fact that you can run on a 15-inch, you can run two 5K displays at the same time. Phil stated that Apple have worked with LG on these new 5K displays called Ultrafine. So the 5K display is 27-inch. There's a 4K one, which is 21.5-inch. The displays themselves have wide color gamut, built-in camera, microphones, and speakers. Have 3 USB-C ports on the back. They can actually charge a MacBook Pro over a Thunderbolt 3 cable. This is... People have wanted Apple to update their own external display for a long time, and this kind of seems like the replacement for it by working with LG and having an actual LG branded one. So do you think that's the way it's going to go?
Yeah, so they had spoken, so during at the end of the keynote, they have like a hands-on area, and Nilay Patel from The Verge spoke to an Apple spokesperson about this, whether they were going to stay in the standalone monitor game, and they basically said that they aren't in that game anymore, and that their partnership with LG is kind of where it's at. So at least for now, they don't plan on staying in that game, and that's what they've told a major news agency. So it's kind of, I would take that as at least for the next 2 years, you won't see an Apple display.
What do you think about the general design of it? I mean, I like all the tech they put into it, but it kind of like looks a little bit retro boxy, because I guess we're so used to kind of curved products.
Yeah, it's not the most beautiful display. Where I think when they say they worked with LG, I don't think any of their design team were involved. It's very PC, black plastic. At least it's quite minimalist for that kind of style. So I'm pretty happy that it's not like overly bulky or like huge bezels trying to make a statement or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm quite a fan of the whole package. So including design and taking price and what you're getting for it. As long as, the one thing I can't seem to find if it has in-plane switching. Do you know if it has in-plane switching?
Yeah, I haven't quite got to look at the specs too much yet for that.
Because often with these like monitors, or at least my work monitors, always have terrible like viewing angles. It's just frustrating. So hopefully they have like a MacBook style viewing angle, and then I think they are a great buy. So I think the 21.5-inch 4K model, you can use that on the 12-inch MacBook. And you can't use the 5K one because it needs Thunderbolt 3. Oh, and you can charge your new MacBook Pro out of any one of the USB-C / Thunderbolt 3 ports, so you can plug it into any one, which is cool.
I thought that was awesome. Yeah, definitely, because you don't have to kind of like try to reach the wire around or anything. It's just whatever side works, which is great. Okay, so yeah, they moved on with some more program demos. I was really hanging out for this. So these cover video, graphics, and audio. So they started off with Final Cut Pro X 10.3. So this is the new version. It's had a complete overhaul. So this is a big update for users. I don't use it myself, but I'm definitely interested in it. So this is Apple's Pro video editing software. This showed good real-world use of the touch bar. Sorry. And so this is what I was hanging for was for stuff in actual Pro programs rather than just showing it working with Apple Mail or browsers and that sort of thing. Now, second off, they moved on to one I was really hanging out for, which is Adobe Photoshop. Of course, I use Adobe programs all the time. So this is the first third-party program in a demo. So they had this lady from Adobe demonstrating it, showed great two-hand use of the trackpad and the bar at the same time. I thought was really brilliant. And I'm definitely keen to try it, particularly with Adobe Illustrator. The little bit that did irk me is that Adobe still hasn't allowed proper full screen support. Rather, you just have like maximized, window, but not the actual proper full screen. So that bit kind of let me down a little bit, but we're here for the touch bar use, and just the fact that she was kind of brushing around and changing the color at the same time was just awesome. What do you think about this sort of use? Yeah,
so it's definitely more your field than mine, but I think it's really cool. They showed quite a nice variety of different uses. that show that touch bar is really customizable and usable in a whole lot of different ways. So I thought it was pretty cool. I quite liked her as a presenter. I thought she was really cool, quite like chilled, but a little bit funny and like really like pretty good. I thought she was really cool.
I love the bit when she's like, this is so much fun if you can't tell. And she's just like, but that's I totally relate to that, because there's so many times I'm doing something like, oh, I love doing that. I love, baking the curve on this path. And but to anyone else, you're just sitting there staring with your mouth hanging open at the screen. It's just, it's pretty classic. And the last one they did was the program DJ Pro from a company called Algorithm. I didn't know of either of these products, but from what I can gather, this is a very highly used program for live DJs. So it's not specifically audio editing, but it's all about live performance. So yeah, the guy that came out said he's been DJ for 20 years. He showed excellent use of how you can slide your finger back and forth. So what do you think of his demo? I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so the first time I watched this keynote, I watched it a couple of times, was at 4:00 in the morning. So it kind of felt like, it started off feeling like, whoa, this music is way too early in the morning for me. And then it kind of started feeling like I was coming home, like, well, it was like late in the club, just before the sun rises. So it was kind of a whole weird sensation. And it was like, now I'm getting into it, and then it ended. So it was quite a different experience from the side of the world, I'll say that. But he showed good use of it, considering so I think they said they've been only working with their partners for a month. Pretty good overall.
Pretty good there. And they've finalized the part about third-party support by saying that Microsoft Office Suite will have full support for it. So this kind of demonstrates Apple and Microsoft are continuing to be friends with the use of Bing and that sort of thing. So the announcement was that there was full touch bar support through all the Office Suite. And the fact that the user base of Office is obviously a lot bigger than the Apple equivalents, this is actually a pretty important announcement. So yeah, they then showed the token MacBook Pro product ad. So Johnny Ive, obviously you got his narrating the soundtrack in his very inviting voice, as he always has. It kind of seems these days that he's only in voice form. Like, no one ever actually sees him unless he's at a fashion show.
Yeah, so
what do you sort of think of that?
Yeah, he wasn't there. He wasn't there for another keynote recently, and his latest project is designing a tree for a hotel in London with Mark Newson. So it's a bit odd, I must say. I think he got given the DO title to kind of be like, please stay, here's a great title, you can do whatever you want, but please stay. And because I think he, in my mind, he's pretty much done at Apple in terms of like, he's made the world's most iconic consumer electronics devices. And I think, I'm speaking for someone I've never met, but essentially I think that he's like, nah, I kind of want a new challenge. And that's why, you see him getting involved a lot more with these charity auctions. A couple of years ago, they had a really cool red Mac Pro and some other things for Product Red. So yeah, I think he has other projects that he is more interested in.
Yeah, he's kind of taken a little bit of a back seat there, but as always, loved the advert, I watched it a couple of times and I thought, heck yeah, I just ordered one of those. So that made me feel pretty good.
He definitely still has like a lot of inputs. So I don't want to be misconstrued to basically me saying that he has nothing to do with design. I think he has a lot of input on the direction and how things look, and a lot of final say, but I don't think he's sitting there with his iPad Pro and Apple Pencil very often.
Yeah, it's definitely less full-time, I'd say. So, the battery always an important part of laptops, up to 10 hours. That's not much difference from before, but that's still pretty good for a laptop. It's actually illegal, I found out, to carry a laptop on a plane with an internal battery over 100 watts. So if we're talking about wattage, the 13-inch has 49.2 watt battery with a 61 watt adapter, and the 15-inch has 76 watt with a 87 watt power adapter. So people kind of talking about, why don't they push the battery usage, the power further? And yeah, I kind of think with Samsung phones exploding left, right, and center, and planes, trading Samsung phones at terminals, then yeah, I think it's better to stick with your 10 hours rather than have your laptop blow up. So
yeah, so the USB-C adapter or standard can carry power up to 100 watts. So it's pushing it up on the plane limit, and I think that it's probably a happy medium where they're at now.
Oh, definitely, I'd agree with that. Okay, so Phil then starts sort of wrapping up the MacBook Pro presentation, says it's environmentally friendly, ticks all the boxes, does a sizing comparison with the Air and versus the original Mac notebook, which was really funny to see them back to back. He reveals the pricing, which we'll just detail very soon. And he adds the 12-inch at the very left to the lineup, saying this is our modern lineup. What do you think about him? Yeah.
So what happened? We've spoken about this before, and we're really hoping for the death of the Air lineup, and essentially in that one picture, they killed. They
spelled
Air,
it out, yeah.
And then you can still order the 13-inch though, but it's done. This is the MacBook lineup of the future. Anything else is legacy and being kept around for better price points. So that was finally there, and I'm happy to see that you don't have a MacBook Air that is bigger than the MacBook and then a Pro. I don't know. It's just a good lineup now.
Yeah, it was good to see them all together. It kind of makes all sense. And yeah, I was definitely hanging out for the Air to kind of disappear into thin air. So to say.
Yeah, it's trading.
Yeah. So pricing. This was the one, a bit of a surprise. So, okay, there is a 13-inch with no touch bar. So it has better specs and such, but it only has 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and it starts from 2200. So that's 8 gigs of RAM with 256 SSD. Now the touch bar ones is the ones that we're definitely a bit more woe with the pricing. There was the 13-inch touch bar starts at 2699, 8 gigs of RAM and 256 SSD. The 15-inch with touch bar from 3599, 16 gigs of RAM and 256 SSD. So what are your thoughts? Like, what did you predict the pricing would be? When it was announced, I kind of thought, okay, the current one, the 2015 model, will drop a couple hundred, and then this new one will probably be 2400, but certainly not as high as it was. I am disappointed that the previous model didn't get a price drop. I don't really know how much of it is to do with American to Aussie dollar or anything.
No,
what do you reckon about that?
I think that's just I think there's no US dollar price drop in them either. But I was surprised by that. I don't know how you release a new model and still say, well, the one with the old processors and not as good at technology is going to stay what it costs. I didn't understand the pricing. I found it to be a bit high. I know when they announced the 15-inch Retina MacBook, the pricing did go up compared to its previous generation, then dropped back down quite significantly in the next 6 to 12 months. So it's possible that happens again. I was really hoping for that on the 12-inch MacBook. It's been 2,000 Australian for quite a while now, and I thought that they would probably drop that, bring in the new Pro at the $2,000 price point, which is what the old Pro goes for and went for. Thought that's how they'd do it, and then just move the 12-inch MacBook down, but that was a bit naive, I reckon.
Yeah, I think at first I was like, oh damn, this is gonna, this is more than what I predicted it was going to be, but especially after watching the keynote a couple of times, and I'm just thinking that if they roll out that much, third-party program support with a touch bar, and I'm going to be using it, that much, and hope to be, that part of it sort of pays off, so it's not so bad. But I think that to people straight up, especially people that bash on Apple, it's like, oh, well, they've did this price hike and they've removed all these ports and, oh my God, typical Apple and blah, blah, blah. So yeah.
I don't feel, I'm a bit negative about the pricing, but I don't feel that way about it. I kind of think, it's the laptop pricing of the future. The reality is that the numbers have dropped, and they have to make their profit somehow, and essentially lower volume at a higher price point. I think that they're worth it. I would say that they are worth it. They're very good laptops, very nice laptops, and
definitely.
So I don't think it's not worth it. I just do think that in raw absolute numbers, it's a high price to pay. But essentially, 90% of most people's tasks are done on their iPhone, which is half the price. And then, choose what you want to complete the other 10%. Might be an iPad Pro. And if not, then you're probably willing to pay that higher price because you're a power user. So, I think it's fair. So.
Yeah, I when you think of it like that, as especially with the iPhone, you think, okay, you use it every day, all the time. And you think of the cost of it. I remember when I first found out how much iPhones cost way back in the day, I was like, oh, well, I can't believe it's that much. But if you break that down into a daily cost over the 2-year, span you'd use it before you upgrade, it really actually is worth it because you just depend on it so much, especially now with, how much better they've become. So just for a quick comparison, in Australia, we pay a bit of a premium in terms if you compare it to the US pricing. So I'm just going to do a quick US versus Australia versus UK because their pricing's had a big hike, primarily due to Brexit, it would seem. So with the 13-inch touch bar model, in US is $17.99 US dollars. Now the Australian one, is $2,699, but if you convert that the US to AU, that's 2,343, which means we pay $356 more in Australia. And now for UK, that same model, 1749 pounds. So the US to UK conversion brings that at £1,463. So they pay £286 more, which in Australian dollars is $458 more.
Yeah, so
it's pretty crazy.
So, well, it is crazy. The one thing that is worth mentioning is GST, and what's known in the UK as VAT, and South Africa too, and that's why I know the term. But essentially, so the US prices are almost always given excluding GST. So the $17.99 in quite a few states. So I think like New York is tax free, GST free. So they would get it at $17.99, but some states wouldn't. So let's say, even if we had to take 10% on the 2,343, we're still paying like $120 more than we should be on a direct convert, including GST. And then on the UK one, their VAT rate is 20%. So that's like double. And at the $458, it's kind of like almost in line with the US prices, including a sales tax.
Yeah, I think when you point it out like that, I think just people don't, and I myself, I probably didn't actually take the time to properly look into it, as you explained just then. But I think, people straight away do a conversion. They're like, oh, we're getting ripped off. But you put GST into the picture, and that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
and then if we look at it that way, we still get a little bit more ripped off than the UK guys. But yeah.
I just think, like anything, getting stuff shipped from America or Europe or anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere down to Australia, we pay more for postage of items and we wait longer, and it's just the price to pay for living down here. So
speaking of this, the reason that I kind of like know to look to take GST and VAT into account is you would have seen. I know because we've spoken about it, but the new MacBook Pro isn't even on the South African Apple website. And
I know, I was doing the price comparison and I thought, okay, well, Nic's from South Africa. I just want to see what they go for there. And in my URL, I'll just change, the AU or the UK to ZA, and it just was like page not found or whatever. I was like, okay, this is weird. I'll go to the homepage. I'm like, there's no announcement. I was just like, this is crazy. I was like, They've just started loving South Africa a bit more with Siri support, and now...
No, so I know they got the iPhone, I think it was on October 7th, so quite a while after us here, and usually, that's like the closest turnaround time I've ever experienced. I got my iPhone 6 in December of 2014, so that was a good 3 months after it was launched. I had it for 9 months before it was no longer the new model, and so... You see, I've always looked to bring stuff over or to take stuff over to South Africa, because I had to wait so long for it. So like when I would look at these prices, I'd be like, oh, but we're getting ripped off so badly because, it's so much more of my income, and look at this. And essentially when you look at it like with GST or with VAT, it makes you feel a little bit better about these things. And so that's why I did that. But yes, it's good to be in a country where we actually get the stuff on day. Like I was in the store the same day it was announced to look at the MacBook and say, oh, look, this is what it really looks like. South Africa won't see it for a while to come.
I had never actually looked into it. I just assumed that product announcements, regardless of what release date, appeared just on all the versions of Apple sites.
Yeah, no, they don't.
Yeah, it's good. But I guess in that way, if someone from South Africa hasn't seen the keynote or just doesn't see anything online about it and goes on the Apple site, then they're not going to get annoyed by the fact that they can't, order this new MacBook Pro for, months or however long it's going to take. So yeah, my, as I said, in terms of waiting, the wait time now on the site is 4 to 5 weeks. At the time of order, it was 2 to 3 weeks. So, so I'm definitely just going to be sitting here getting pumped about it. It's been so long. I've talked about it for so long. And yeah, I'm trying to just lower, I know I love it. I'm just trying to lower my own internal hype and own expectations, just because it's been such a build up, but definitely can't wait to start using it, especially with third-party apps. So as Nick mentioned, the 11-inch Air is gone and the legacy SuperDrive MacBook Pro is gone. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Don't know. Okay, sure, there's people that use CD drives. I've got my own external one that I use every now and then, but yeah, with Apple wanting to constantly pushing forward the industry, it just completely, I'm surprised that it hung around this long anyway.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it that it was still around. So it's good that it's gone. Sorry to anyone who was holding on to buy it, but yes, it's finally gone. No more SuperDrive MacBook Pro.
Well, I think basically with how it's going, with the removal of the ports and that, there's going to be that many cables and accessories and peripherals being purchased anyway. So if you really want to drive, just buy an external one. So
yep.
Yeah. Okay, so that wraps up a pretty awesome event. I'm stoked. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or?
So I think just like non-event wise, on the 11-inch Air, I'm just glad that they got rid of it because it had a terrible aspect ratio. It was a weird size. And aside from that, now that we're done with the event, I mentioned that I'm pretty keen on getting the phone. So if I don't change my mind, which I probably will, then I should have a phone to sort of give my feedback on next episode. If not, then it'll probably be an Apple Watch Series 2 that I would be discussing. So I'm kind of looking to purchase at least one of those two relatively soon. And then I recently got Michelle, who's my partner. The JB Hi-Fi had a special on the original Apple Watch, and so she really just wanted the... sorry, I just got to fix my earphone again. So... Cool. So she just really wanted, she had the rose gold 38mm Apple Watch and wanted a stainless steel version. So we picked up the original stainless steel with brown leather band from JB for $279, which is only $50 more than the band is, which I find absolutely insane. And I think that deal was on for like 3 or 4 days. We picked up one.
It's a good deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Even if you like get rid of the watch face overall, like you picked up a band and like there's not that much difference in Series 1 and Series 2 to like original and Series 2 to justify $700. So yeah,
definitely.
She's really happy with it so far, and I think it's pretty cool. But the quick thing there is the first one we opened bricked on the update, because you have to update before you can set it up. So that bricked and we had to go back. And,
really?
And sort that out with JB and get a new one. They're really cool about it though. So I give them props. Yeah, so that's like kind of and then we realized that she had 4 Apple Watches and I've only had 1 to unbox because she unboxed 2 of the stainless steel ones, the original silver model that she got on day 1 of them being released, and then the rose gold version when they were released. So spot the Apple fan in the relationship, I say. Makes it a lot easier to justify my devices, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, I've unboxed 0 Apple Watches, but then I've just dropped a sweet 2700 on this new MacBook Pro, and just talking about it's getting me excited again. So
yeah, I'm also pretty excited for some new devices.
Oh, definitely. And so speaking of events, we covered previously maybe new iPads, January, March, perhaps. Well, we'll let you know first thing. And how you can find out about this sort of stuff is follow us on social media with Apple Slice on Instagram. That's Apple Slice Podcast. On Twitter, it's at Apple Slice AU. Facebook, facebook.com/Apple Slice Podcast. Or you can search us on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Just chuck Apple Slice in there. And if you're in iTunes, be sure to rate and review. Let us know what you like, how can we improve, and that sort of thing. And so it's been a bumper episode, our longest yet, I would say.
Yeah.
It's great to have you on for it as always. And I'll catch you in the next non-event episode.
Yeah, good to chat. Cheers.
All right, no worries. Catch ya.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.